In the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, king of Judah, Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, the king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to wage war against it, but could not yet mount an attack against it. When the house of David was told, Syria is in league with Ephraim, the heart of Ahaz and the heart of his people shook, as the trees of the forest shake before the wind. And the Lord said to Uzziah, "Go out to meet Ahaz, you and Shear-Jashub, your son, at the end of the conduit of the upper pool on the highway to the washer's field. And say to him, be careful, be quiet, do not fear, and do not let your heart be faint because of these two smouldering stumps of firebrands, at the fierce anger of Rezin and Syria and the son of Remaliah. Because Syria, with Ephraim and the son of Remaliah, has devised evil against you, saying, let us go up against Judah and terrify it, and let us conquer it for ourselves, and set up the son of Tabeel as king in the midst of it. Thus says the Lord God, it shall not stand, and it shall not come to pass. For the head of Syria is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. And within 65 years Ephraim will be shattered from being a people. And the head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is the son of Remaliah. If you are not firm in faith, you will not be firm at all. Again the Lord spoke to Ahaz, ask a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol or high as heaven. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, and I will not put the Lord to the test. And he said, hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to weary men, that you weary my God also? Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Immanuel. He shall eat curds and honey when he knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the boy knows how to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land whose two kings you dread will be deserted. The Lord will bring upon you and upon your people and upon your father's house such days as have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah, the king of Assyria. In that day the Lord will whistle for the fly that is at the end of the streams of Egypt, and for the bee that is in the land of Assyria. And they will all come and settle in the steep ravines, and in the clefts of the rocks, and on all the thorn bushes, and on all the pastures. In that day the Lord will shave with a razor that is hired beyond the river, with the king of Assyria, the head and the hair of the feet, and it will sweep away the beard also. In that day a man will keep alive a young cow and 2 sheep, and because of the abundance of milk that they give, he will eat curds, for everyone who is left in the land will eat curds and honey. In that day every place where there used to be 1,000 vines worth 1,000 shekels of silver will become briars and thorns. With bow and arrows a man will come there, for all the land will be briars and thorns. And as for all the hills that used to be hoed with a hoe, you will not come there for fear of briars and thorns, but they will become a place where cattle are let loose and where sheep tread.
Hello, City on a Hill. It's awesome to be with you as we come again to this passage in Isaiah. Like you, I'm sure you're waiting on the announcement today from the Premier about how things open up. We're continuing to pray and to look forward to the chance to meet together physically. But in the meantime, I'm so glad you're here with us today as we gather around God's Word. And I should say, on Monday, we had a really wonderful time together on Monday night, a resurrection of Monday Night Live for a week, where we looked at being trained and growing in the spiritual gifts, especially those gifts which we haven't always used well in our church. So I'm very thankful for Kev for leading us in that, and we want to continue that openness. So if something is happening, as we wait on the Word together and as we pray, I'd love you to be able to let us know that and maybe share that word so we'll be able to encourage one another as we vet it and weigh it at the service. So let's pray as we come to this word now. Father God, as we look at this passage of Isaiah, we pray that you would move in us powerfully, that you would eliminate any distractions, that you would allow the technology to work, we pray. And Father, as we come now, please soften our hearts and prepare us to hear from you and to respond to you, because we love you and we want to experience more of you this day, and we pray it in the name of Jesus. Amen. Well, who likes rock climbing? I'm just looking at the screen. Yeah, Abrama. No, she didn't. Who likes rock climbing? I have done quite a bit of rock climbing over the years, and in fact, there's a picture of me in action. And this is a younger version of me. Well, actually, it's not me, is it? Maybe the upper body would be the same, but he's got the wrong hair. But rock climbing is something that I've done a lot, but it's not something I enjoy. If you've done rock climbing, you'll know perhaps why that is the case, because you come to the bottom of the cliff and you look up and they put the harness on and then they test the harness and then, for me at least, my palms start to get a little bit sweaty, my heart rate starts to rise and I start to get a little bit nervous, a little bit sick, and of course I know there's no real danger. There is no real danger. I mean, how likely are you to die in a rock climbing accident? No one knows. I looked it up this week, so I do know. You have 1 in 320,000 chance of dying when you go rock climbing. Now that sounds a bit worrying until you imagine that that's almost the same as getting in your car. Every time you get in your car, apparently, you've got a 1 in 320,000 chance of dying in an accident. And if you get on your bike, you're 3 times more likely to die than you are rock climbing. Rock climbing is one of those activities where there is a very high perceived risk. You're scared, but actually there is a very low real risk. Now, I know all these things in my head. I know that the rope, we're told, could support a Land Rover hanging off the cliff. I know it's not going to break. I tell myself that I'm going to be fine, that I've done it all before, and it's okay at the beginning as I start to climb. And then the further up I get, I do what you're not meant to do and I look down, and then the heart rate really starts to go. And then every time this happens, I totally forget that there's a rope. I totally forget it. So for me, it's all depending on me, and each climb and I'm white knuckling on the rocks, and then after time, the heart rate's going higher and higher, I start to shake and shake. I forget there's a rope. And at that point, the question is, who am I really trusting in? What am I really trusting in? Am I trusting in the rope, or am I trusting in my ability to climb that cliff and stop myself falling to my death? Well, this question of trust, this question of what do you have your trust in, is actually a very significant one. This week I read a Bible commentator by the surname of Davis. And he points out, as he's talking about this passage of Isaiah chapter 7, that for most of us, this question of who do we trust or what do we trust doesn't really come up on a day-to-day basis. And he points out that we generally live in a comfortable bubble, and we're confident that we can do what we need to as the day progresses because we've done it so many times before. We get in a comfortable routine. Like, who am I trusting when you get out of bed in the morning? And when you go in the shower, and then you sit at the table and you pour milk on your cereal, then you go to work or to study or wherever you go, who am I trusting? And we come home after work and then we relax and then we eat dinner, then we go to sleep. And throughout that day, it's quite possible to go through that routine and think, well, I'm not trusting in anyone or anything. I know what to do and I'm just doing it. But the reality is we always trust in something. And if you don't know what you're trusting in, that is because you're actually trusting in yourself. And that's one of the reasons that God permits trials. That's one of the reasons that God permits things that jar us and rock us in our world. He permits griefs. He permits other things that we don't expect because it shakes us. It forces us to ask, who am I really trusting in? What am I really trusting in this very moment? And this, as we come to Isaiah chapter 7, you heard the reading. This is what chapter 7 is all about. Listen to verse 1. In the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, king of Judah, Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, the king of Israel, came up to Jerusalem to wage war against it, but could not yet mount an attack against it. Now, those words just roll off the tongue, but essentially, the southern kingdom, the small nation of Judah, has got a big military problem because the two nations above them, Israel or Ephraim and Syria, have joined forces and they're going to come against them. In fact, they already have come. And it's been a very successful military campaign by their enemies. They haven't quite been able to take Jerusalem, but it was bad. And now the house of David is told Syria is in league with Ephraim. It's happened again. There's intelligence reports filtering in from the north. There are troop movements everywhere. A new invasion is coming and it's going to be worse than the one before. And their response comes for us in verse 2. The heart of Ahaz and the heart of his people shook as the trees of the forest shake before the wind. Terrified. This is not a safe activity that feels dangerous like rock climbing. This is an existential danger. This is a real and present danger. And the response of Ahaz and the people of Judah, I think, is understandable, isn't it? Wouldn't you feel that way? If a military invasion was going to come and destroy your homes and your livelihood and perhaps take your very lives. And God, in chapter 7, graciously, because that's who God is, he's gracious. He recognizes this and he responds to it. And in verse 3, we see what he does. He sends the prophet Isaiah and his son, and they're told to go and meet Ahaz at the conduit of the upper pool. Why is Ahaz at the conduit to the upper pool? Well, he's there because he's worried about the water supply. He knows that a siege is coming, so he's there making preparations to make sure that they've got water to sustain them in the siege. And I can imagine as he's looking at that water supply, his palms are sweaty, that his heart rate is probably going because he knows that it's going to be very important. And God meets him. He sends Isaiah. And these are the words that God gives Isaiah to say. Listen to them. They're beautiful. Verse 4, if we suffer with anxiety, listen to these words. Be careful. Be quiet. Do not fear. And do not let your heart be faint because of these two smoldering stumps of firebrands. God comes to Ahaz in his anxiety and his stress and his fear, and he says, be still, be calm, be quiet, trust in me. Essentially he says, Ahaz, do nothing. Let go of the cliff, fall back and trust the rope. I've got you. These smoldering firebrands, they're the ashes of a burnt out campfire. They've got nothing. Relax and be at peace. It's a real moment of grace. God, the sovereign creator of the universe, comes close to one man, to King Ahaz. And he offers him comfort in his anxiety. He says, trust me. And then in verse 9, he says, there's a warning though. He says, if you are not firm in faith, then you will not be firm at all. Isaiah says, God has come down to meet you, King Ahaz. He's giving you everything that you need. But if you don't trust him, if you're not firm in your faith, you will not be firm at all. You will not stand. You can see, let's put ourselves in Ahaz's shoes. This is not an easy thing. I can imagine for sure that his military and political advisors were saying, King Ahaz, Your Highness, the prophet Isaiah has come to you and he's saying, do nothing. Just sit on your backside and wait. Well, let us tell you, this is not a time for spiritual airy-fairy trustingness. We need hard, concrete solutions. This army is really coming towards us, unlike your God that Isaiah speaks of, which might be out there or might not. You need to do something. You need to get climbing up that cliff, Ahaz, and if you don't, you will be destroyed and your nation will be destroyed and it'll be cataclysmically bad for you. So start climbing. And God, through Isaiah, says, let go. It's hard for Ahaz. He's got the opportunity of a lifetime to put his trust and his faith in the living God of Israel. He can do that, and he can let go and experience the terror before the rope holds him, or he can keep climbing. And God's graciousness continues to him because God recognizes how hard this is to do. And if you're a Christian, you know how hard this is to do. We are like other people are tempted by anxiety. We're tempted to control our worlds. We're tempted to think about all the bad things could happen because they could happen. And we're tempted to be high in anxiety and stress and fear, just like everybody else. And we know, you know how hard it is to trust God when he says, be quiet, be still, don't fear. And so in verse 10, God, the creator of the universe, comes again to this one man, Ahaz. And he says this, ask as a sign of the Lord your God. Let it be deep as Sheol or as high as heaven. God says to King Ahaz, I know it's hard for you to believe. Ask me for a sign. Anything you want. I know it's tough for you. And in essence, what God is saying to Ahaz is, here's a blank check. Signed the Lord God Almighty. You fill in what you want and you cash it. And I will show you that I'm faithful. Can you see what an incredible gift Ahaz has? A sign. He says, you ask for any sign that you want. Trusting in me is difficult, King Ahaz. I know that. I'm giving you everything that you need to believe. Ahaz has a golden opportunity. What would you ask for? If you had the opportunity to ask God for a sign, what would you ask God for? What would convince you of his trust and his faithfulness? But Ahaz has got to cash the check. God's given him, ask any sign you want, but Ahaz has got to ask the sign. But Ahaz has decided that he will not do this. Verse 11, and this, on the surface, this sounds like a good response, but it's tragic. He says, I will not ask, and I will not put the Lord to the test. And if you know your Old Testament, you know he's quoting Bible. He says to God, you've told me to ask for a sign so I can put my trust in you, but I'm not going to put you to the test because the Old Testament says don't put the Lord your God to the test. It sounds pious, doesn't it? It sounds like it's religious. It sounds like it's an act of faith, but it really is an act of unbelief. Ahaz is saying, I'm not going to ask for a sign because I'm not going to trust you. I'm staying to the cliff. Thank you, God. And I can see those next handholds and I know what they're going to be and I will make it myself. And we know that because in the book of 2 Kings, we know that Ahaz chooses not to trust in God's word to him. He turns instead to the king of Assyria, the rising superpower in the north. And he strips his land of its gold and its silver and its treasure, and he sends it to the king of Assyria, and he says, could you please come and save me from these northern neighbors who are threatening to destroy me? Would you come and help me with your army? Ahaz says, I'm not going to trust in God. I'm going to trust in my political and my military negotiating skills. And it's a tragedy. Ahaz was offered the chance to trust God. And his response is no. And Isaiah's response, there's an element of anger in it. Because God has given him everything he needs to believe and to grow in faith. He has given him everything he needs to see an astonishing miracle of God's deliverance. And Ahaz says no. And then verse 13, Isaiah says, "Hear then, O house of David, is it too little for you to weary men?" Maybe Isaiah is thinking about himself. Is it too little that you weary me, that you'd also weary my God? And then in verse 14 he says, "Therefore, you didn't ask for it, but the Lord will give you a sign anyway. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and you shall call his name Immanuel." God says to King Ahaz, "You haven't asked me for a sign because you don't trust me, but there will be a woman and she will give birth to a little child, and before that child's a certain age, this threat that you fear from the north will vanish like smoke. And you'll see that I am capable of delivering you." But because Ahaz refused to trust, there would be consequences. And in that second half of the reading today, we see what those consequences would be. Verse 17, "The Lord will bring upon you and upon your people and upon your father's house such days as have not come since the day that Ephraim departed from Judah. He will bring upon you the king of Assyria." Ahaz, instead of trusting in God, has looked to the world to find something that he can trust. He's looked to himself to maneuver his way out of this, and God says to him, "Because you've done this, you'll get what you asked for, the king of Assyria." Someone has said this whole situation is like the mouse that was being attacked by two big rats. And the mouse squeaked for the cat, "Come and save me, cat, come and save me." And the cat came and dealt with the rats. But then the mouse found himself as the dessert. And that's exactly what happens here. Assyria will come. And Isaiah says, you will get what you trusted in. And goes on to say it'll be like a plague of bees, like a swarm of flies. They'll infest the whole land. They'll occupy everything. They'll destroy it. He uses another image. He says it culturally terrible image of a man shaved of all his body hair, left naked and humiliated. Isaiah said, that's what you asked for, Ahaz. It's what you're going to get. Now, the application from here is, and I think you probably know what the application of this text for us already is. It's not hard to see, is it? Trust me, God says. Trust me. Stop striving, Christian. Stop trying to climb through life in your own strength. Stop holding on to the things that you make sense with your mind as you climb up the cliff of life. Let go. Let my rope hold you. Trust in me. Make a decision to trust in me. Now, for Ahaz, that was really hard to do. And you and I know it's very hard for us to do too, isn't it? It's very hard at the beginning of our Christian walk to let go of everything that we hold on to so tightly. When I was 17 and I first began to hear the call of God on my life to come and follow Him, Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me. And when I first heard that call on my life, I was terrified. My life was deeply unsatisfying, but at least I was controlling my own deep unsatisfaction. And the things that I was trusting in was success, sporting success or academic success. And that was going to help me climb, and the right relationships, the right romantic interactions, the right success in whatever I was trying to do, climbing up the social status, being accepted by my peer group at school. These were massive things I was clinging onto. And that moment I heard God speak in and He's saying, let go of it all. Trust in me. Which I heard as, become a weird Jesus freak and lose everything. It's hard to trust. It's hard to let go. We want to hold on to control. We are all control freaks. We want to hold on. We want to manage. We want to control. We want to be at the center of our worlds, driving our own cars. We don't want to let someone else drive our cars and us sit there waiting for them to prang it into a tree and destroy everything, do we? No one does. But becoming a Christian it's non-negotiable. You cannot become a Christian without surrendering control to God. That's what Ahaz is wrestling with. Do I trust myself or do I trust God? And as a Christian, every one of us experience this. It's a weighty decision. But like the way God related to Ahaz, so he relates to us. God's gentle with us. He's patient with us. He called me for years to follow him. He kept patiently saying, Andrew, stop trusting in yourself. It's making you miserable. Trust in me. Trust me. And he kept reminding me, he kept giving me opportunities. And that particular night when I first heard that call of the gospel most clearly, to let go and to trust God, even then he was patient because the speaker was explaining to me that God hadn't left me without a sign. That God had reminded me, he had told me, he'd shown how much he loved me by sending his only son, Jesus, into the world, and that he would die for me. He loved me. Anyone that would die for me wanted my best interests. And then the preacher explained that wasn't it. He rose from the dead. Not only does he have good intentions, he has the ability to actually make them come to pass. God raised Jesus from the dead. He has all authority in heaven and earth. You can trust him. And as I heard those words, it was a battlefield in my mind and my heart. And I suspect that there is someone listening here, and that battlefield is your reality right at this moment. You too know that God is calling you to trust him. You know that God is reaching out in love. You know about the cross of the Lord Jesus. You know of his resurrection. You know that he says, I love you. I want you to follow me. Lay down your burdens. Take my yoke on you. It's gentle, it's easy. You'll find rest for your souls. That's not giving you rest. Trust in me. And I know that I sense that there's someone here this morning that you still cling on to the things. You're still trying to climb the cliff. You need to let go. Trust in the sign that he's given you. Trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. Will he really let you fall to destruction? Will he really take everything from you like a self-centered leader who is after only his own interest? No. Jesus gave his own life to show how much he loves you. He has your best interest. You can trust him. You can let go of the cliff. But do you know the dilemma that you face? Until you let go, you will never know that the rope actually holds you. That's the whole point of my rock climbing analogy. When I'm up there thinking I'm doing it all by myself, the rope is on the harness, but I don't even know it's there anymore because in my mind, I am trying everything and I'm living in that terror of falling to my death far below when all the time the rope is holding me. But until I let go, the rope's there, but it will not do anything. And with you, if you're coming to Christ for the first time, it's an either-or thing. As long as you climb the cliff, you will not experience the benefits of trust in him. It's like Ahaz. Ahaz had the potential. God spoke to him of the rope that could hold him, and Ahaz refused. If you're not yet a Christian, please, would you let go of the cliff? Trust yourself to the rope that is Jesus Christ, the rope that will not let you fall. But this is not just a word for someone that's not yet a Christian. This is a word for us too, isn't it? And you say, well, I've trusted him. I let go of the cliff a long time ago. I've been a Christian for the last 70 years, or I've been a Christian for the last 15 years. I remember like putting my hand up and saying, I will follow you, Jesus. I remember that. So I've already done that. Yes, you have, but it's not a once-off thing. Holding the rope, trusting yourself to the rope is a daily decision that you make. There's a Bible commentator called Kaiser, and he writes this, and these words are good. He says, the only way we can have God is by relying on him and using him. For the only way to accord God's deity to him is by using him and risking one's life upon God's word by trusting his promises and obeying the revelation of his will. And you say, so you're telling me we should use God? Yeah, we should. We should use God. And until you use God by trusting Him, until you use God by really trusting Him on a daily basis, you're not really trusting in Him. You're not really experiencing Him. You're not allowing Him to have His deity in your own life, because you've kind of, at the beginning of your walk, you've let go and you've fallen back on the rope and you've gone, oh, this is amazing. God, you're supporting me. What a wonderful freedom. But then the human tendency is, isn't it? We're control freaks. Then we lean back out of the rope and we try to find our hold on the rock because, well, He held us once, but next time it might break. Next time I might fall all the way. And we take away our trust from Him. And we do it subconsciously sometimes, but we do it. And God says, if you're a Christian, I want you to trust me every day. When you wake up in the morning, you should go to God. God, this is a new day. I offer it up to you. Would you lead me today in the little decisions about how I respond to someone I meet, and in the bigger decisions too? And in those bigger decisions, we trust God day by day by saying, God, I'm going to ask you, who should I marry? Should I get married? If I'm married, should I stay married? What job should I do? What do I do with my money? How do I invest my time? And it's not as if God will, every day you ask God for signs from heaven for every one of these decisions. God gives you the parameters which to go in, but trusting God says that I will respond in faith to the parameters that you give me. You give me a body, you give me sexuality. Trusting in you means that I will trust God's word in how I use my sexuality, no matter how I feel or what everyone else is doing. Trusting God in little decisions and big decisions. It's taking hold of the rope. It's letting go and letting the rope hold you. And it's actually the recipe for freedom from anxiety. Sometimes when I go to bed, I often tend to worry about things before going to bed, particularly thinking about things that happen in the day or things that are weighing heavy on me. And I think many people are like this. And there's a prayer that I often pray, which is, God, I'm tired. My body is tired, my mind is tired, I need to sleep. And I know right now that I want to stay awake because I think I can control all this by worrying about it, and that I need to keep my hands on the wheel and I need to keep my hands on the cliff, because if I go to sleep and let it go, then what could happen overnight? And I say, Lord, I know that I'm finite, you're infinite. I know that I can't control my world, but you control it. And so tonight, as I close my eyes, I'm going to sleep and trust in you. That while I'm asleep, you will continue to run your world. And in the morning when I awake, you will continue to run your world. It's actually a wonderful letting go. It's a freedom. And this is true even in the busyness of our days. You wait the next day and there's a million things to be done, and there's lists to do, and if you're a homemaker and you've got those children running around, your day is constantly chasing one thing after another, or you're working at a construction site, you're working in the trades, there's a whole lot of things you have to achieve, you're in a corporate setting, there's a whole lot of stuff you have to do, you have to fill in your timesheets, you have to bill your hours, whatever it is you have to do. And in the busyness of us all, it's easy to actually think that we're climbing ourselves, but there's a wonderful prayer that I pray also by a man called Oliver Cromwell. He was a general, a politician a long time ago in England, and he prayed a prayer one morning before the greatest battle of his career. And he prayed this prayer: O Lord, thou knowest how busy I must be this day. If I forget thee, do not thou forget me. What a beautiful prayer. I'm going to be busy. There'll be times when I won't even be conscious that you're with me. But if I forget you, don't forget me. Don't let that rope stop supporting me and building me and encouraging me. And as I press in on this, I want to press a little bit deeper, because there's one thing I notice in pastoral ministry, and I notice it especially in people who are of my own age. In the mid-40s, it can happen earlier, but in the mid-40s, you go through this period where you wonder, what's my life been? And often when I speak to people in their mid-40s, they speak about, and it's like the glory days are gone. And when they speak about their faith, Very often they'll say, I remember when we were at uni. Or I remember when we did that beach mission. And I remember God was so close. It was like every day he was with me and I was aware of his presence and I was just trusting him. We had no money, we had nothing, and we trusted him. And it was just an amazing time. And you know what? I don't feel God's presence like that anymore. And I feel that he's distant. And there can be many reasons for that, yeah? But you know, one of the things I'm convinced of in my own life and as I've met with others is one of those reasons is that before we trusted him with everything, and then as we've gone on, maybe there's possessions have accumulated and we've got extra comfort that we've become attached to, and we just don't trust God like we used to. Because if you could strip away the layers, we really started trusting in things like superannuation. We started trusting in things like comfort or positions in our career. And we give all the right words and we get involved in church and everything, but the heart is gone from it. We're trying to do both. We're trying to climb the cliff in our own strength and trust in the rope at the same time. And what that really means is while we say the right things, we're actually climbing the cliff. And if that is you, this is not in judgment, because I wrestle with it myself. It's pleading with you, do what you did at first. Trust God. I mean, how do you trust God if you never actually go beyond your comfort zone? You're not trusting God, you're trusting yourself. If you never give money beyond what you're comfortable with to others, then you don't know what it is to trust God. If you never go somewhere where you're not looking forward to it, or you never have a relationship with anybody that you meet or serve because you never step up, then you don't know what it is to feel the rope support you. And the tragedy is that it can feel like the glory days of your spiritual life have departed. And so if that is you, hear these words from Isaiah. Look at the example of Ahaz. It's written there for you. See the choices he made and we're going to see what becomes of them next week. And choose differently. Say to God again this morning, or whenever you're listening, all right, I'm going to let go. And I'm still scared. I've been following you for decades. I'm still scared. I'm going to let go. Would you show me how I can trust you more? I promise you, if you do that things may not be easy, but I promise you that you will experience the closeness, his presence. It may be actually relating to stepping out and sharing your faith. That's trusting God, isn't it? If you do that, it may not go well, but you will know his closeness because you'll be trusting in him. Well, this takes me to the sign of Immanuel, doesn't it? This is a sign that we look at the coming of Christmas. It's we hear the name Immanuel, God with us, Christmas by Christmas. Actually, this sign, as it was first given, was a sign of judgment. It was a sign given by God through Isaiah to King Ahaz, saying, because you didn't trust me, I'll show you that I'm faithful, and there'll be a virgin that will be with a child. And before that little child, which will be called Immanuel, will reach a certain age, all the things you worry about will be destroyed. They'll be gone. You won't have to worry. Now, there's some debate about this sign. It's a really difficult passage to understand. It's clear that it was given to Ahaz in his time and that there was a little boy called Immanuel, a little boy who was the sign, a little boy who, before he reached a certain age, these things happened. We don't know who that child was. History doesn't record it for us. Some commentators believe that child was actually Isaiah's second son. But we don't know. But we do know that the sign given to Ahaz would have a greater fulfillment. 700 years later, God would remember that first sign he'd given to Ahaz. And he would fulfill those words perfectly by giving a greater sign. Matthew 1 tells us that the virgin would be with child. And her son would be not just a little boy that would be born in the ordinary way, to be a sign of his age, would be a sign of political situation. He'd be fully God and fully human. He'd be God with us. Jesus is that sign given to us. Jesus is the one promised, born of a virgin, coming into our world. Jesus is the sign that says to you, you can trust in God. God made flesh, God with us. with all the twists and turns of our life, God is the one who has given his son Jesus. Jesus is the one who can remind us, who can be the focus of saving faith. Indeed, the Bible is very clear that there is no other name except the name of Jesus by which we can be saved. Anything else you trust in, anything else you white knuckle on, won't save you. It won't save you. It'll fail you. If we don't stand in Jesus, we won't stand at all. Jesus alone is the deliverer. And as the band come up, and as we begin we're going to have communion in a moment. But as we do, I want us to remember that Jesus is not just the deliverer for now. Jesus is not just the one we let go of in our lives so that we are not consumed by anxiety and fear. God just doesn't want us to have a life of deliverance now, although he does. In Jesus, there is a far greater deliverance, and that deliverance will occur on Judgment Day. And this is where I'll end. Because it's true that our enemies of sin and death, they will surround us. That there will come a time when the blackness rushes in on us, and it may be the physical health diagnosis that our body is dying. It may be the sudden instant where the accident happens. Whenever it will be, there will be a last breath that we will take. And then it will be the great white throne of God's judgment. When you rock climb, what you're trusting in is very evident as you become afraid. Are you clinging on or are you letting go? Well, that day of judgment will reveal what you trusted in your life. It will cut through all the external things. It will show what you really trusted in. And friends, this is what I want to end with. The truth is, what you trust in now for your deliverance is the very same thing you will trust in on that day of judgment. What you trust in now to deliver you, you will trust in on that last day to deliver you too. What is it? What are you trusting in? Romans 1:17 says, the righteous will live by faith, by trust in God. If that is what you're trusting in now, friends, you have the most glorious expectation that when this life passes, that the righteous will live by faith now will also mean you will live by faith for eternity. You will trust in Jesus, God with us. Immanuel. Isaiah 26, this last verse, and then I'm going to pray, says this. Isaiah 26, 1-3. You will keep in perfect peace the one whose mind is stayed on you. That's beautiful. Did you hear it? You'll keep in perfect peace the one whose mind is stayed on you, is focused on you, is focused on Immanuel. You will enjoy that perfect peace of God's presence in the storms of this world. And the final storm of Judgment Day, you will enjoy the peace that has no end. That's what the Lord God wants for you. That's what we as a church want for you and for all of us. To stay our hearts on Jesus. We want to know Jesus, and because of this promise, we want to make him known. So I'm going to pray, and we are going to have communion, and this is, as I pray, this is going to be a good time if you haven't got some bread yet, or you need to get some bread and some red liquid, whatever you will have as you celebrate communion. Now's the time to get it. But as we do that, I'm going to pray. Father God, as we come and we ask that question of ourselves, who do we trust in? Lord, would you please, by your Holy Spirit, break through the shells and the hardness around our hearts. If we trusted you a long time ago, but we failed to trust you now because we think that we've got it. We think that we know how to live this life. Rock us, Lord. Don't let it require the crisis. Don't let it require the accident. Rock us now, Lord, so that we can put our trust in you again afresh this morning, that we can step out in faith, picking up our cross and following Jesus on the road that's ahead, the road that's adventurous, the road that's dangerous, the road that is walking with you, and the road that is only the only road towards true fulfillment. Lord, would you help us again to experience that if we've grown cold and dead? And Lord, for these, perhaps one person this morning, and you hear his voice calling you to follow him and to trust him, to let go and to trust in him, then Holy Spirit, we pray together as a church that you would move in that person's heart or those people's hearts and draw them to a true saving faith in Jesus, our Messiah.